Startup Delta is a public-private partnership, initially set up by the government, and we took it out of the government now. And the ambition is to build the best possible ecosystem for startups in Europe by addressing the barriers that startups have in setting up a business, in scaling it, in getting access to capital, access to talent, and access to markets. So basically, we've addressed all of the various bottlenecks that there are, and we're finding the partners to work with to remove those barriers. For me, it's important, the term doesn't really matter, startup, scale up, but the importance is that it's an entrepreneur who has the ambition to grow fast, and that comes with an innovative product. There are many entrepreneurs. It's maybe the difference between starting a bar or a chain like Starbucks. So really the focus is on those entrepreneurs that really want to grow big. Digital at least allows you to scale. Especially now with cloud computing, there are no barriers anymore, and there's also location is not even a barrier anymore. You can reach your markets through the internet. You get your IT from the cloud. Everything is modular, so you can scale up fast. So many things are enabled by digital, and then obviously there's the data generated through your business and data you can actually get everywhere, which can make your business much more focused, much smarter, much more directive to the customer needs. So digital is a very relevant component in nearly every different section of the market. I think Europe has everything to be competitive. Sometimes I think the government may be too much involved, so you really want kind of self-sustaining ecosystems like you have in the US. Though if you look at China, obviously the government's even much more involved. But I think we have very good public services. We've got generally also good public sectors. We've got good entrepreneurs. We've got very good knowledge centers and universities. So it's there and it's possible. We've seen Spotify. We're seeing a lot of new technologies also coming from Scandinavian countries. Germany obviously is a very competitive economy. The Dutch are doing really well. There's a lot of economic growth, and we're seeing a lot of innovation here. Not to mention London as a center for fintech. So everything is there to be competitive, but we should acknowledge that the speed of development in China and the breadth as well is remarkable. And obviously Silicon Valley has an incredible deep and broad base, and has basically a generation head start when it comes to availability of capital, also the smartness of capital, many entrepreneurs reinvesting, so you get multiple, you get repeat entrepreneurs that are really important for the ecosystem. So I think Europe has everything to go for it, but we are in a catching up situation. I think the EU and the European Commission are very acknowledge the importance of startups and entrepreneurship. Obviously, it's very far removed from where the actual innovations are happening. We have big research programs, and research programs typically are focusing on researchers, and it's more difficult to actually reach the entrepreneurs or the intermediaries, the accelerators and stuff. But a lot of stuff is going on there. One can ask ourselves, is the European Commission the entity that is best placed to actually directly support startups? I think it's more about creating a regulatory environment that is positive towards innovation. That's something we should guard very carefully. I think we should be experimenting with new policy tools, so allowing for kind of sandbox environments. And the Commission is aware of that and is actually also experimenting with that. But we're still a long way off. So awareness is there, but actual putting it in practice is still, like in many places, is still a bit of a challenge. What we really need in Europe is more entrepreneurs that enter into the investment game. We've seen that with the founders of Skype have done a remarkable, Niklas Zennström, and have done remarkable for the Scandinavian area in the way that he invested, but also brought in a lot of his expertise, a lot of contacts, has been personally very involved also as a role model. I think we need more of that. Also, I think the asset class of startups, scale-ups and venture capital is currently maturing in Europe. Often the funds are still relatively small, and what we seem to be lacking is the funds that cover the whole chain, so that actually play the numbers game early on with very high risk investments, but then have the capacity to continue investing through and include the big tickets. We don't see enough of that. It means that you can do the scouting, and you can actually then select through your scouting process the entrepreneurs, the teams, and the IP that is really promising, and support them through to the big investments, and not be too scared about watering down your investment. And I think that's something we're missing still in Europe. It's coming. We've seen EQT, other big funds also. This is Scandinavia. Obviously, you've seen in London also big VC funds emerging. But in most of Europe, that's still lacking. That I don't know. I don't even think in the US they are the real growth engine. Obviously, we've seen a few big companies, but the bulk of invested capital, the bulk of employment is still with we have kind of legacy businesses, and the ability of those businesses to transform and to embrace the digital innovation. I think that's where the real added value and competitiveness for Europe could be. I mean, we've seen companies like IBM reinvent themselves. GE has done an incredible job in reorganizing themselves, and we're seeing this now also in companies like BMW and others. It's really that capacity, or ING in the Netherlands as a bank, really reinventing the way they are servicing their customers. They're using digital tools, and not just taking an existing business or a service and making it digital, but really rethinking their business. And I think that's where the real value is, and the startups are actually the ones that push that. I mean, you need a disruptor in your business. You need Tesla to wake up the big car companies. You need Airbnb to wake up the hotel business, say, there are many new concepts out there. You need a place like this, like B Amsterdam it's called, to wake up the real estate business, say, there are different ways that you can service the business community, the commercial real estate business. And I think that's their role, shaking the tree, hitting the doors of the boardrooms. That's where they really add value. Well, if you have the grandpas, they are the Booking.com. You have TomTom, obviously, has been mentioned a lot. So you have those companies that have been successful in the past, and then you have a new generation of companies like Adyen, who's becoming basically world payment provider. They're an incredibly successful company. Then we have Elasticsearch, which has been good. Katawiki is an auctioneering company that's been growing like mad. But also we're looking at companies outside of tech. Rituals is a cosmetics company that's done really well. We have Suit Supply in fashion. So there are many companies that are now growing at a really fast pace, and that are internationalizing. And it really echoes a culture of entrepreneurship that is now being fired on, not only by the entrepreneurs themselves, but we're finding now there's a more willing community of investors, more willing community within the public sector, but also in universities and others to support entrepreneurship. So I think that's really driving this change. Well, my message would be first, this is a risky asset class, so but be prepared to take the risk. And at very, very early stage, it's a numbers game. So you need to be able to invest in a lot of companies, and you know that you're going to lose out on many, but you're basically close to the ones that will be successful. So that, I think, is one. Two is be very tough be supportive. So don't be overly bureaucratic. Many of our startups complain how difficult it is to actually get contact with VC, then to actually get an investment sometimes takes them 6 months, 7 months. It's a really long time, and then they're very early stage. So you can do full due diligence on a small company, but they will pivot a few times. So it's much more important that you trust the entrepreneur. So don't kind of make it light in the beginning and make the due diligence as you go along. But also be quite tough on content. Help the entrepreneur face the difficult questions early on, so they can have a brilliant product, but maybe no knowledge of the market. Make sure that they ask those questions, that you ask those questions, because entrepreneurs sometimes get lost in the brilliance of their ideas and the incredible invention that they've made, without really asking themselves, what is the market that we are serving? And I think the investors have the contacts and have the experience to put the entrepreneurs on track early on. We haven't seen many banks entering the VC game, and that the liquidity that we're seeing from banks is extremely low. Also on the lending side, we have hardly any venture debt in Europe. We have Silicon Valley Bank and a few others that are stepping into this space, but the banks are not typically the ones that are providing the capital, and which is a pity, because many, especially in hard tech and high tech, much of the funding is actually project funding. So it's something that if you can combine a large corporate with a startup and a financial institution, you could actually fund these things in relatively traditional ways. Whereas now we always look at venture capital, and we look at the high risk processes that a company would be in if they were carry the risk themselves.